Tonight, as you tuck yourself in and let your mind wander, I'd like to invite you on a gentle journey. Picture a quiet cultural wave that began as a ripple in the east and grew into a soothing tide that washes over the entire world. This is the story of the Korean wave, a transformation of entertainment and beauty that speaks not with shouts, but with whispers of soft music and graceful gestures. As you drift off, let's trace this delicate path from humble beginnings to global phenomenon. And so, with your eyes closing, we begin at the source. Imagine, if you will, a country that stood at a crossroads between ancient tradition and rapid modernity, a society that within just a few decades would transform itself from the ashes of war into a gleaming, technologically advanced nation. This is the soil from which the Korean wave would eventually grow, rich, fertile, and carefully cultivated. You see, South Korea's journey in the latter half of the 20th century was not just economic, it was cultural, a quiet revolution of identity and expression that would one day ripple across the world. It all began with something as simple and as profound as a nation deciding to tell its own story. If you've ever watched water ripple outward from a single stone dropped into a still pond, you'll understand the energy that begins with a single gentle touch and then expands, growing and growing until its influence touches every shore. That is what we are about to journey through now, the first ripples of what would become the Korean wave. Long before it touched the entire world, it was a quiet, powerful current forming in its own backyard, in the music studios and television sets of 1990s South Korea. This was a time of remarkable change, a country rapidly modernizing and looking for new ways to express its vibrant national spirit. And from this fertile ground, two powerful forms of art began to bloom and capture hearts. A new style of pop music and emotionally rich television dramas. Let's begin with the music, a world that would come to be known as K-pop. The foundations were laid by groups like Seo Taiji and Boys, who debuted in 1992 and did something truly revolutionary. They blended Western genres like hip-hop and techno with Korean lyrics and sentiments. Think of it as a master chef taking familiar global ingredients, but combining them with a distinct local spice, creating a flavor that was both excitingly new and comfortingly familiar. They spoke to the dreams and frustrations of a new generation, and in doing so, they forever changed the Korean music industry. They proved there was a massive, enthusiastic audience for this modern hybrid sound. This success created a blueprint, and soon entertainment companies began carefully cultivating what we now recognize as the K-pop idol system. Groups like H.O.T. and S.E.S. emerged in the mid-1990s, not just as singers, but as complete, polished performers. They were trained for years in singing, dancing, and stage presence, almost like Olympic athletes dedicated to the art of entertainment. Their performances were synchronized spectacles, and their music videos were cinematic. These groups dominated the charts in Korea and began to find passionate fans in neighboring countries like Japan, China, and Taiwan. The ripple was growing, crossing its first international borders. It was the proof of concept, the evidence that this carefully crafted art could resonate far beyond its place of origin. At the very same time, on television screens across the nation and then the region, another kind of story was captivating audiences. Korean TV dramas, or K-dramas, began to weave their own special magic. These weren't just shows, they were emotional journeys. Series like Autumn in My Heart in the year 2000 or Winter Sonata in 2002 presented love stories of a particular kind, tales of pure, often tragic romance, of destined soulmates and heartbreaking sacrifices. The production was lush, with beautiful cinematography that made every scene feel like a postcard. The storytelling was patient, focused on the delicate development of relationships and the subtle nuances of human feeling. For viewers across Asia who were perhaps tired of more cynical or action-packed Western shows, these dramas offered a return to heartfelt emotion and traditional values of love and loyalty. They created what came to be known as Hallyu, or the Korean wave stars, actors like Bae Young-joon, whose gentle smile and noble characters in these dramas sparked a frenzy of admiration across Japan and Southeast Asia. It was a quiet cultural exchange, one TV episode at a time. The dramas sold the beauty of Korea's seasons, its cities, and its cultural sensibilities as much as they sold the story. So by the early 2000s, these two streams, the dynamic, precise energy of K-pop and the melancholic, beautiful yearning of K-dramas, were flowing strongly together. They had transformed South Korea from a cultural consumer into a cultural exporter. The domestic market was thriving, and a significant regional footprint was firmly established. The foundation was solid, built on quality, emotion, and a unique identity. The stage was set, the audience was waiting in many countries, and the creative energy in Korea was bubbling. All it needed was one moment, one perfect, unexpected splash to send those ripples racing across the entire ocean of global pop culture. And that moment was just on the horizon, waiting in the most unlikely of places. A song about a wealthy Seoul neighborhood and a man doing a very silly dance. And now we arrive at a moment that felt, for many of us, like a sudden, delightful earthquake in the global landscape of entertainment. It was the year 2012, and a phenomenon emerged that would change everything for Korean pop culture, though it arrived in perhaps the most unexpected package imaginable. Let's gently explore what happened when a man named Psy, with his infectious tune Gangnam Style, created a digital tsunami that washed over every corner of the world. Imagine, if you will, a single stone tossed into a perfectly still pond. At first, there's just a small splash, a few concentric ripples. But then something remarkable happens. Those ripples don't fade away. Instead, they grow and multiply and travel further than anyone could have anticipated until they're lapping at shores thousands of miles away. This is what happened with Gangnam Style. It began as a music video in South Korea, a playful satire of the affluent Gangnam district lifestyle, complete with a quirky dance that anyone could imitate. But then it began to spread. The spread was digital, viral, and utterly unprecedented. Before long, the song's distinctive Oppa Gangnam Style refrain and that bouncy horse-riding dance were everywhere. People from every continent were watching the video, sharing it, making their own versions. It broke records on YouTube, becoming the first video ever to reach 1 billion views, then 2 billion. It topped charts in countries that had never paid attention to Korean music before. It was played at sports stadiums, in school dances, at weddings. The world quite suddenly was dancing to a Korean beat. What made this moment so significant in our gentle journey through the Korean wave was that it served as a massive global doorway. For millions of people, Gangnam Style was their first conscious encounter with Korean pop culture. They might not have known the language or the context of the satire, but they felt the rhythm, they joined the fun, and in doing so they became curious. They wondered, what else is happening in Korea? They clicked on related videos. They discovered that behind this one viral sensation was an entire, sophisticated industry waiting to be explored. Think of Psy's breakthrough not as the wave itself, but as a tremendous roaring breaker that crashes onto a beach, pulling back to reveal all the beautiful shells and treasures that were hidden beneath the water's surface. The viral fame of Gangnam Style cleared the sand, so to speak. It created global awareness, a new receptiveness. It proved that language was no longer a barrier to enjoyment. The world's entertainment gatekeepers, radio stations, TV networks, streaming algorithms suddenly had proof that content from Korea could command a global audience. This digital tsunami created a vacuum of curiosity, and nature, as they say, abhors a vacuum. Into that space flowed a more sustained and nuanced wave. The door that Psy kicked open with his dance moves remained wide open. Other Korean artists who had been building their craft for years found that the world was now listening. Bands like BTS and Blackpink, who we will come to shortly, didn't have to start from zero in explaining where they came from. The path had been paved. The global audience was primed and ready for more. It's fascinating to reflect on how this single, seemingly silly song accomplished what decades of strategic planning could not. It was an organic, crowd-sourced phenomenon driven by the sheer joy of participation. It wasn't pushed by a massive marketing campaign. It was pulled by the global audience themselves, sharing and dancing for the pure fun of it. In that way, Gangnam Style was the perfect ambassador. It was accessible, inclusive, and demanded nothing of the viewer except a willingness to smile and move along. So as the last echoes of that iconic beat faded from the global charts, something profound had shifted. The landscape was forever altered. The Korean wave was no longer a regional trend or a niche interest for dedicated fans. It was a verified, undeniable force in global pop culture. The world had tasted the vibrant energy coming from Korea, and it wanted more. The viral moment had passed, but the gateway it created would usher in a new era of artistry, connection, and a much deeper, more sophisticated wave to follow. And as that gentle, more sustained wave began to build, a new chapter of the story was ready to unfold. As we've been exploring the gentle spread of Korean culture around the world, we've seen how music first began to find its way across oceans, through the airwaves, and into the hearts of listeners far from Seoul. But what happens when an artist manages to do more than just produce a catchy song? What happens when they manage to build something that feels less like a passing trend and more like a true movement, with roots that grow deeper with each passing year? This is where we find the story of BTS, a group that transcended the one-hit wonder phenomenon to create something lasting, meaningful, and deeply connected to their audience. Imagine, if you will, a garden. Early K-pop groups were like beautiful annual flowers, vibrant, eye-catching, and immensely popular for a season. They would bloom brilliantly, capture everyone's attention, and then fade as the cultural weather changed. BTS, however, was different. They planted perennial seeds. They cultivated a garden that would return year after year, growing stronger, more intricate, and more deeply rooted with each cycle. They weren't just creating fans, they were nurturing a community, building relationships that felt personal, authentic, and enduring. The emotional connection they forged with their audience, whom they affectionately call ARMY, is perhaps their most remarkable achievement. This wasn't the distant admiration of stars seen only on stage or screen. This was a dialogue, a shared journey. Through their music, their social media presence, their documentary series, and their heartfelt messages, BTS invited their listeners into their world in a way that felt remarkably intimate. They sang about universal struggles, the pressure to succeed, the fear of failure, the search for identity, the bittersweet nature of growing up. They were honest about their own doubts and insecurities, creating a powerful sense of solidarity with millions of young people who felt the same way. It was as if they were saying, "We see you. We understand. You are not alone." This connection transformed the traditional fan artist dynamic. The ARMY became more than consumers of music. They became participants in a shared narrative. They mobilized to support the group, breaking records and achieving milestones that seemed impossible. But more importantly, They found solace, inspiration, and a sense of belonging. The fandom became a safe harbor, a digital and emotional space where people from every corner of the globe could connect over shared values and a shared love for 7 young men from South Korea. BTS, in turn, consistently expressed their gratitude, their love, and their respect for this community, reinforcing that bond with every album, every concert, every tweet. Their global sustainability is a testament to this foundation. While other acts might have risen quickly on the strength of a viral hit, BTS built a career arc that was deliberate and thoughtful. They evolved their sound, matured their themes, and expanded their artistic vision while maintaining that core connection. They became cultural ambassadors in the truest sense, speaking at the United Nations about self-love and youth empowerment, and using their platform to advocate for important social issues. Their success wasn't just measured in chart positions or awards, though they collected plenty of those, but in the tangible positive impact they had on their fans' lives. This phenomenon redefined what global fandom could be. It showed that in our hyper-connected, yet often isolating digital age, people crave genuine connection. They crave art that speaks to their inner lives and communities where they feel seen and valued. BTS and the ARMY demonstrated that a pop group could be the catalyst for that, creating a gentle but powerful wave of empathy, understanding, and mutual support that circled the entire planet. And as this new generation of artists was redefining fandom through music and heartfelt connection, a parallel transformation was quietly unfolding on TV screens in living rooms and on laptops everywhere. A different kind of Korean storytelling was beginning to captivate audiences with its own unique magic, proving that the gentle wave we've been following had many beautiful currents, each flowing into the next, creating a sea change in how we experience entertainment from across the world. Imagine, if you will, a quiet evening. The day's responsibilities have been tucked away, and you find yourself in that soft space between waking and dreaming. Perhaps you reach for a story to carry you into that gentle transition, something that feels both familiar and surprising, comforting yet captivating. And in this quiet moment, you may find yourself drawn to a particular kind of storytelling that has traveled far beyond its origins to find its way into hearts and homes around the world. We're speaking, of course, about Korean dramas, or as they're affectionately known, K-dramas. These television narratives began as local programming in South Korea, but have since transformed into something remarkable, a global streaming phenomenon and cultural ambassadors that have touched millions of people across continents and cultures. Think of it like a beautifully woven tapestry that started with just a few threads in one corner of the world, and gradually, through careful craftsmanship and universal human themes, expanded to cover a much larger canvas, connecting people through shared emotional experiences. The journey of K-dramas from local television to global streaming platforms is a fascinating story of evolution and connection. In the beginning, these dramas were primarily made for domestic audiences. telling stories that reflected Korean society, its values, its struggles, and its joys. They were like windows into a particular way of life, offering glimpses of family dynamics, romantic relationships, historical periods, and contemporary challenges. But something interesting began to happen as these stories traveled first to neighboring Asian countries through television exports, and eventually through the power of the internet and streaming services to every corner of the globe. It turns out that while the settings might be different, the emotional language these dramas spoke was profoundly universal. They tapped into feelings we all recognize. The flutter of first love, the ache of loss, the strength of family bonds, the desire for justice, the complexities of friendship. These emotional touchstones created bridges across cultural differences, allowing viewers to see themselves in stories that might initially seem quite foreign. Now you might wonder what makes these particular narratives so captivating to such diverse audiences. One way to understand it is to think about a beautifully crafted piece of music. There's a structure, a rhythm, a particular harmony that makes it both unique and accessible. K-dramas developed a distinctive storytelling style, often self-contained stories told over a single season, typically around 16 to 20 episodes. This format allows for deep character development and complex narrative arcs without the open-ended commitment of multi-season Western series. It's like reading a complete novel rather than waiting years for a series to conclude. The pacing is often more deliberate, allowing emotional moments to breathe, relationships to develop gradually, and plot twists to be carefully seeded and revealed. This creates a different kind of viewing experience, one that values emotional resonance alongside narrative momentum. But beyond the structural elements, there's something about the emotional landscape of these dramas that feels particularly resonant. Many K-dramas explore themes of redemption, second chances, the healing power of connection, and the quiet heroism of everyday life. They often feature characters who grow significantly over the course of the story, who learn from their mistakes, who find strength they didn't know they had. In a world that can sometimes feel fragmented and rushed, there's something deeply comforting about stories that take the time to explore the emotional consequences of actions, that show the gradual mending of broken relationships, that celebrate small victories alongside larger ones. It's a storytelling approach that feels both gentle and profound, like watching a flower slowly unfurl rather than fireworks that explode and fade quickly. The globalization of K-dramas accelerated dramatically with the rise of streaming platforms. Services like Netflix, Viki, and others recognized the growing international appetite for this content and began investing heavily in both acquiring existing dramas and producing original Korean content. Suddenly, viewers in Europe, the Americas, Africa, and beyond could access these stories with subtitles in their own languages. This created a remarkable phenomenon. People who had never visited Korea, who might not know anything about Korean culture beyond these shows, found themselves forming deep emotional connections to these narratives. Streaming algorithms introduced viewers to K-dramas who might never have sought them out otherwise, creating a virtuous cycle of discovery and appreciation. Think of it like a river that started as a small stream in one country, but as it flowed, it collected tributaries from around the world, growing wider and more powerful until it became a major waterway connecting distant lands. What's particularly fascinating is how these dramas have become cultural ambassadors, often sparking interest in broader aspects of Korean culture. Viewers who fall in love with a particular drama might find themselves curious about the food characters eat, the locations where scenes are filmed, the music that accompanies emotional moments, the fashion that characters wear, and even the language itself. This curiosity creates a ripple effect. A drama about a chef might inspire someone to try Korean cooking for the first time. A historical drama might lead someone to research that period of Korean history. A romantic drama set in Seoul might spark interest in visiting the city's neighborhoods. In this way, these television stories become more than just entertainment. They become bridges to understanding, windows into another culture that feel inviting rather than intimidating. There's also something to be said about the aesthetic quality of many K-dramas. The cinematography often features beautiful, carefully composed shots, lingering on meaningful glances, capturing the changing seasons, highlighting small details that carry emotional weight. The production design creates immersive worlds, whether it's the sleek modernity of a corporate office, the cozy warmth of a neighborhood restaurant, or the historical authenticity of a period setting. The soundtracks blend original scores with carefully selected songs that enhance the emotional tone of scenes. All these elements work together to create a complete sensory experience that feels both cinematic and intimate, like being invited into a beautifully illustrated storybook that comes to life. Of course, as these dramas traveled, they also evolved. Creators began incorporating more diverse themes and settings, sometimes blending traditional Korean elements with universal story structures. We've seen K-dramas that are romantic comedies, thrillers, historical epics, fantasy adventures, slice-of-life stories, and everything in between. This diversity ensures that there's something for almost every taste, while still maintaining that distinctive emotional and narrative sensibility that makes them recognizable as part of this particular storytelling tradition. It's like a musical genre that develops different subgenres while still maintaining its core harmonic principles. As we consider the remarkable journey of K-dramas from local TV to global phenomenon, we can recognize something beautiful about what this represents. In a world that sometimes emphasizes our differences, these stories remind us of our shared humanity, our capacity for love, our resilience in the face of hardship, our search for meaning, our need for connection. They demonstrate how art can transcend borders, how emotional truth can be understood across languages and cultures, how a story told with authenticity and care can find its way into hearts far from its place of origin. And as these television narratives continue to weave their gentle magic around the world, they carry with them more than just compelling stories. They also bring certain aesthetic sensibilities, particular ways of seeing beauty and expressing identity, which leads us naturally to consider another aspect of this cultural wave that has traveled alongside the entertainment: the beauty standards and practices that have become equally influential on a global scale. But that, my friend, is a story for another quiet moment. Let's take a gentle, soothing journey now into what has become one of the most personal and intimate aspects of the Korean wave. While K-pop captures our ears and K-dramas capture our hearts, there's another dimension of Korean culture that literally touches our skin, transforms our reflection in the mirror, and has quietly reshaped beauty industries across the globe. This is the world of Korean beauty, or as it's known affectionately worldwide, K-beauty. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a skincare ritual not as a chore or a luxury, but as a daily meditation. A moment of self-care that begins with a gentle oil cleanser, followed by a foaming cleanser, then a hydrating toner, an essence, perhaps a serum or two, an eye cream, a moisturizer, and finally, a protective sunscreen. What might seem like a complex routine to some is actually a deeply mindful practice that originated in Korea. It's a philosophy that views skincare not just as maintaining appearance, but as a fundamental act of self-respect and wellness. This philosophy would eventually travel far beyond Korea's borders, creating a revolution in how people around the world think about beauty. K-beauty's approach is fascinating because it operates from a fundamentally different premise than the Western beauty traditions many of us grew up with. Think back to Western beauty norms from past decades. The focus was often on achieving a specific look, perhaps a matte finish or a bronzed glow, and then concealing any perceived imperfections. Products were often marketed with the promise of quick fixes, dramatic transformations, or hiding what was considered undesirable. Korean beauty, by beautiful contrast, is rooted in a philosophy of skin health first and foremost. The goal isn't to cover up, but to care for, to nourish, to bring out the natural, radiant health of your skin. It's the difference between painting over a crack in a wall and actually repairing the foundation so the wall becomes strong and beautiful on its own. This is the core of the K-beauty ethos. Achieve skin that's so healthy, so luminous from within, that you need very little makeup to look beautiful. It's a long-term investment in your skin's well-being. This philosophy was perfected and popularized through a dazzling array of innovative products that felt entirely new to global consumers. While sheet masks existed elsewhere, in Korea they became a canvas for innovation, infused with everything from snail mucin and bee venom to fermented ingredients and precious gemstone extracts. BB creams, which stood for blemish balm, started as post-procedure cover-ups in dermatology clinics before K-beauty brands transformed them into all-in-one tinted moisturizers with skincare benefits. Cushion compacts revolutionized makeup application, turning liquid foundation into a portable, buildable format that gave a dewy, natural finish. Then came essences, ampoules, sleeping masks, and lip tints. Products with delightful textures and formats that made the act of applying them feel like a luxurious treat rather than a mundane task. Each innovation wasn't just about creating something new, it was about making effective skincare accessible, enjoyable, and integrated into daily life. The packaging itself became part of the experience, often whimsical, cute, or meticulously elegant. Brands like Etude House built entire identities around fairy tale aesthetics, while others like Sulwhasoo drew inspiration from centuries-old Korean herbal medicine traditions, presenting their products in exquisite, weighty containers that felt like heirlooms. This attention to detail created a complete sensory experience, the sight of beautiful packaging, the feel of a cooling gel or a velvety cream, and sometimes even subtle calming scents. K-beauty taught the world that skincare could be something you look forward to, a small daily luxury that nurtures both your skin and your spirit. Social media, especially YouTube, became the global runway for this beauty revolution. Beauty vloggers from Seoul to Los Angeles to Paris began creating content called Get Ready With Me or skincare routines, demystifying the multi-step process and showing tangible results. These videos weren't just advertisements, they were intimate, personal testimonials. Viewers could see the glow, the plumpness, the transformation in real people, not just airbrushed models. The 10-step routine became a viral phenomenon, a shared language among beauty enthusiasts worldwide. Online communities formed where people traded tips, decoded ingredient lists, and shared their holy grail finds. Suddenly, people in cities from New York to Sydney to London were discussing snail slime, propolis, and Centella asiatica with the same enthusiasm they might discuss the latest movie or song. This digital boom translated into a staggering economic reality. What began as a niche interest for beauty enthusiasts blossomed into a multi-billion-dollar global industry. Major Korean beauty conglomerates like Amora Pacific and LG Household and Healthcare saw their international sales skyrocket. Department stores from London Selfridges to New York Sephora dedicated entire sections to K-beauty, with bright pink displays and rows of sheet masks that became almost iconic. Even traditional Western beauty giants, who had dominated the market for a century, took notice. They began launching their own cushion compacts, essences, and Korean-inspired skincare lines, trying to capture a piece of the market they hadn't created. The influence was so profound that it shifted global beauty standards themselves. The glass skin looks skin so clear, hydrated and luminous it resembles polished glass became a coveted aesthetic worldwide. The preference shifted from heavy matte makeup to light, dewy finishes that let the skin's natural texture show through. It was a quiet revolution in what people considered beautiful. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this phenomenon is how it transcended mere commerce to become a form of cultural diplomacy. When someone in Brazil applies a Korean essence, or someone in France uses a Korean lip tint, they're engaging with Korean culture in a deeply personal way. They're participating in rituals developed over generations, embracing an approach to self-care rooted in Eastern philosophies of balance and harmony. Beauty stores became cultural gateways, and online beauty communities became spaces for cross-cultural exchange. People learned about Korean holidays, food, and customs through their interest in beauty products. In this gentle, daily way, K-beauty built bridges of understanding and appreciation, smoothing the skin of the world while also softening cultural barriers. So we find ourselves here at the intersection of culture, commerce, and personal care. The Korean beauty revolution shows us how something as intimate as a skincare routine can become a global language, how innovation can emerge from philosophy, and how nurturing oneself can quietly nurture connections across the world. It reminds us that in our fast-paced lives, there is profound value in taking a few moments to care for ourselves thoughtfully, to appreciate the ritual of preparation, and to seek beauty not as a mask, but as a state of health and harmony. This gentle, radiant wave from Korea has washed over shores far from its origin, leaving behind not just products on shelves, but a new way of thinking about what it means to care for ourselves and what we consider beautiful. And as we absorb the quiet impact of this personal revolution, we might begin to wonder about the broader implications. How does this cultural export, along with music and television, reshape not just industries and aesthetics, but economies and international relationships? What happens when a nation's soft power becomes this palpable, this personally integrated into daily lives across the planet? Imagine you have a garden that has flourished beyond your wildest dreams. A garden so beautiful that people from all over the world come to admire it, to take inspiration from it, perhaps even to try and grow something similar in their own soil. They come, they see the beauty, and their perception of the land itself is transformed. They begin to view the entire country not through the lens of old history books or distant geopolitics, but through the vibrant, living reality of that garden. This, in a way, is what South Korea did on a global scale. They cultivated a garden of culture, music, shows, beauty, and invited the world to see it. What began as a quiet, domestic tradition of entertainment turned into a profound national asset, something more powerful than many had ever anticipated. We call this soft power, and it's a form of influence that doesn't come from military might or economic threats, but from attraction and persuasion. It's the quiet, often invisible, power of a compelling story. Think of hard power as speaking to someone with a raised voice, trying to command their attention. soft power is speaking in such a gentle, captivating whisper that people can't help but lean in to listen. For South Korea, this whisper became a global conversation. In the early days, the Korean government recognized something remarkable was happening. They saw young people in Vietnam humming K-pop songs. They saw families in Mexico getting invested in the fate of K-drama characters. They saw beauty enthusiasts in France studying Korean skincare routines. They realized that this wasn't just a happy accident of entertainment. It was an opportunity to change how their country was seen, to build bridges where walls might have existed, and to turn cultural affection into tangible economic and diplomatic gains. So they made a conscious choice to nurture this garden, to support the artists and creators, and to present this cultural wave as a gift, a friendly handshake extended to the world. The strategic investment was remarkable, but it was often subtle. It wasn't about creating propaganda. It was about removing barriers and providing the right conditions for culture to thrive. They established institutions like the Korea Creative Content Agency, or KOCA, which helped to fund, promote, and protect the intellectual property of Korean creators. They provided scholarships for foreign students to study in Korea's entertainment and media programs. They made it easier for filming permits to be granted, creating scenic backdrops for dramas that would in turn become tourist destinations, a phenomenon known as drama tourism. The country began to see its cultural exports not as a side project, but as a central pillar of its economy, a new kind of export that carried the nation's brand along with it. A computer chip or a car is a product you use. A song or a series can become a part of your identity, a part of your emotional landscape. This created a bond that traditional trade couldn't. This cultural diplomacy worked in the most personal of ways. For many around the world, their first and most meaningful interaction with Korea wasn't with a diplomat or a trade official, but with a fictional character they cried over or a singer whose lyrics they memorized. When the Gangnam Style phenomenon swept the globe, it did more than make people dance. It sparked curiosity. People wanted to know about the place mentioned in the song. They learned, perhaps for the first time, about the modern, vibrant district of Gangnam, about life in Seoul. They saw a Korea that was innovative, stylish, and humorous. It was a massive, unintended public relations campaign that no amount of government spending could have orchestrated with such authenticity. Similarly, the global success of BTS became a masterclass in soft power. The group's messages of self-love, mental health, and social commentary, delivered in Korean, created a deep and respectful engagement with the language and the values it expressed. When BTS speaks at the United Nations or meets with world leaders, they are cultural ambassadors in the truest sense. They are not politicians, but their influence on public opinion is undeniable, opening doors and warming relations in ways that traditional diplomacy sometimes struggles to achieve. The economic ripple effect of this cultural wave has been profound. It's a beautiful example of how one creative seed can grow into an entire ecosystem of growth. The Hallyu wave didn't just sell albums and streaming subscriptions, it sold beauty products, with K-beauty becoming a multi-billion-dollar industry. It sold fashion, with K-fashion trends appearing on streets from Tokyo to New York. It sold food as people sought out Korean BBQ and kimchi after seeing it in their favorite shows. It sold travel, with tourism boards creating entire K-drama location tours that brought visitors directly to the spots they had seen on screen. It even boosted language education, with enrollment in Korean language courses skyrocketing around the world. The culture became the most attractive shop window for every other product and experience the country had to offer. Economists began to talk about the BTS effect on the South Korean economy, estimating that the group alone contributes billions of dollars annually. This is the power of a compelling narrative. It builds an entire world that people want to buy into, literally and figuratively. Perhaps most importantly, this form of influence helped to reshape historical narratives and build new connections. For countries in Southeast Asia that had complex, sometimes difficult histories with Korea, the shared love for K-pop and dramas created a new, positive common ground, particularly among the younger generation. In the Middle East, Korean dramas found a surprising resonance, offering stories about family, duty, and romance that crossed cultural boundaries. Even in nations where political relations were cool or distant, the cultural heat from Hallyu created a space for people-to-people connection, a shared humanity that could exist outside of statecraft. South Korea, in the eyes of many, transformed from a nation defined by a difficult 20th century history of war and division into a dynamic, creative, and forward-looking cultural powerhouse. Its image became that of a cool, competent friend, a nation to admire and learn from, not just to do business with. Yet, as with any garden that grows rapidly and attracts so much attention, tending to it requires constant care and presents new challenges. The very success of this cultural strategy creates its own set of pressures and responsibilities. The world now watches with intense interest. And with that interest comes expectation, scrutiny, and a weight that falls on the shoulders of the creators and the nation itself. The infrastructure that was built to support this growth must now also protect it, guide it, and ensure it remains healthy and sustainable. The gentle whisper that captivated the world must now decide what it wants to say next and how to say it, as the microphone is forever held in its direction. And as we turn our attention to the care of this magnificent cultural garden, we must also consider the shadows that grow alongside it in the bright, global spotlight. As we've been gently exploring the Korean wave together, admiring the beautiful artistry, the intricate choreography, the heartfelt storytelling that has captured the world's imagination, it becomes important to acknowledge that every beautiful creation, every remarkable surge of cultural exchange, casts a shadow. There's a kind of natural balance in the world, I find. Wherever there's great light, there are also shadows, and the Korean wave, for all its brilliance, is no exception. Tonight, as we continue our gentle journey, I'd like to talk about these shadows not with judgment or criticism, but with compassion, with understanding, and with that same gentle curiosity that has guided our exploration thus far. When a wave becomes as powerful as the Korean wave, when it carries so many artists and creators to distant shores, it also carries with it certain pressures that can be both exhilarating and overwhelmingly heavy. Imagine for a moment being a young artist, perhaps still a teenager, who dreams of expressing yourself through music or dance. You work tirelessly for years, training your voice, perfecting your movements, learning to connect with audiences. And then, one day your dream comes true. You debut as an idol. You release music that resonates with people, and gradually that resonance spreads. It crosses borders. It connects with millions of people you've never met, who don't speak your language, who come from completely different backgrounds. The love you receive feels like a warm, embracing ocean of appreciation. But beneath those welcoming waves, there are deeper currents. There's the pressure to maintain perfection, the constant scrutiny, the feeling that you must not only represent your music or your acting, but an entire culture to the world. That's a weight that few of us can truly comprehend from the outside. It's like being a dancer who's mastered a beautiful, complex routine, only to find yourself suddenly performing it on a stage that spans the entire globe, with lights shining from every direction, and every slight stumble, every moment of exhaustion, every expression of genuine human emotion being examined under that global spotlight. Many Korean artists have spoken candidly about the mental and physical toll of this relentless cycle of creation, promotion, and touring. The industry, in its drive to deliver constant entertainment to its global audience, operates at a pace that can be difficult for any human being to sustain indefinitely. It reminds me of those beautiful porcelain vases that Korean artisans have been crafting for centuries, intricate, delicate, breathtakingly beautiful, but requiring immense care, attention, and time to create properly. When rushed, when pushed too quickly through the kiln, even the most beautiful porcelain can develop cracks. And then there are the contracts, the training systems, the very structure of the industry that produces these artists. It's important to understand this with nuance, with compassion for both the artists and the creative impulses that drive the industry forward. The system that has nurtured so much of the Korean wave is deeply rooted in a particular cultural and economic context. A context of intense competition, of meticulous preparation, of viewing talent as something to be cultivated through years of dedicated training. It's a system that has produced some of the most technically proficient, visually stunning, and emotionally resonant artistic performances the world has ever seen. But every system has its complexities, its contradictions. The same rigorous training that produces breathtaking choreography can, if pushed too far, push human beings beyond their limits. The same contracts that provide security and structure to young artists can, depending on how they're written and implemented, limit their creative freedom or trap them in challenging circumstances. This isn't unique to Korea's entertainment industry. Of course, these are challenges that creative communities face around the world, from Hollywood to Bollywood to the music industries of Europe and beyond. But they take on particular contours and colors within the Korean context, and they're worth understanding with gentle curiosity rather than quick judgment. There have been moments over the years when these systemic tensions have surfaced, when artists have courageously spoken about their experiences, when contracts have been reconsidered in courts of law, when the industry has engaged in important conversations about how to better support the very creative souls who give it life. These conversations are ongoing, evolving, and they reflect a maturing artistic community that's learning to balance its global ambitions with the human needs of its creators. Beyond the industry itself, there are the complex cultural currents that flow from any major cultural exchange. One of the most thoughtful, sensitive areas of discussion has been around cultural appropriation, the taking of elements from one culture by members of another culture, often without proper understanding, context, or respect. As Korean music, fashion, beauty standards, and aesthetic sensibilities have spread across the world, they've inevitably been interpreted, adapted, and sometimes misunderstood by global audiences. This is a conversation that requires particular gentleness, I think, because cultural exchange at its best is something beautiful. It's how humanity learns from itself, how we share the beautiful things we've each created, how we find common ground across apparent differences. The entire Korean wave, in many ways, is a story of cultural exchange of Korean artists learning from global influences, synthesizing them with Korean traditions and sensibilities, and then sharing that synthesis back with the world. It's a beautiful circular dance of inspiration, but culture is also deeply personal, deeply meaningful. When certain elements are taken out of context, when sacred symbols become mere fashion accessories, when traditional clothing is worn without understanding its significance, when cultural practices are adopted as passing trends, it can feel to the people of that culture like their identity is being borrowed rather than understood, like their heritage is becoming a costume. It's a delicate balance, this dance between sharing and appropriating, between appreciation and exploitation. Many Korean creators and fans have navigated these waters with remarkable grace and thoughtfulness. They've initiated conversations about what respectful appreciation looks like. They've gently educated international audiences about the meanings behind certain expressions or styles, and they've approached misunderstandings not with anger, but with a desire to build bridges of understanding. This to me represents the very best of what cultural exchange can be, not simply taking what we find appealing from another culture, but engaging with that culture thoughtfully, respectfully, with a willingness to listen and learn. There's another layer to this too. The way Korean beauty standards have been exported and interpreted around the world. The K-beauty look, with its emphasis on flawless, dewy skin, gentle features, and particular aesthetic ideals, has become global currency in the beauty industry. But this too carries complicated conversations about beauty standards, about self-image, about the pressure to conform to specific ideals. When Korean beauty trends travel the world, they sometimes reinforce the very same pressures that Korean society itself has been thoughtfully re-examining. Pressures around appearance, around youth, around a narrow definition of what's considered beautiful. It reminds me of watching a beautiful flower garden. A gardener carefully cultivates certain blooms, selecting them for their color, their fragrance, their resilience. And when visitors come to admire the garden, they often want to take those flowers home with them, to plant them in their own gardens, to enjoy that same beauty. But sometimes, in the translation from one garden to another, something gets lost. The understanding of why that particular flower was cultivated in that particular way, the knowledge of what conditions it needs to truly thrive, the appreciation for how it fits into the larger ecosystem of that first garden. What's emerged from all these challenges and conversations is not a weakening of the Korean wave, but rather a maturing of it. Artists, creators, industry leaders, and fans are learning together how to navigate this new global landscape, how to maintain the incredible creative output that has defined this cultural movement while also caring for the human beings behind the art, and while ensuring that cultural exchange happens with respect, understanding, and genuine appreciation. The very fact that these conversations are happening, that these challenges are being acknowledged and addressed, speaks to the resilience and thoughtfulness at the heart of the Korean cultural community. It suggests that this isn't just a passing trend, but rather a cultural movement that's thoughtful enough, self-aware enough, to recognize its own complexities and work to address them. As we continue to enjoy the beautiful expressions of Korean creativity, the music that fills our spirits, the dramas that touch our hearts, the beauty products that make us feel a little more special, it's worth holding space for this complexity too. It's worth remembering that behind every perfect performance, there are human beings with their own aspirations, their own struggles, their own need for balance and care. It's worth approaching cultural exchange not as simple consumption, but as thoughtful engagement, as an opportunity to learn, to understand, to connect across differences with genuine respect. This gentle acknowledgement of complexity doesn't diminish the beauty of what we've been exploring together. If anything, it adds depth to it. It reminds us that cultural phenomena, like the people who create them, are multifaceted, evolving, beautifully imperfect in their human dimensions. The shadows don't negate the light, they give it contours, they give it depth, they help us see it more completely. And as those who create within the Korean wave continue to navigate these complex waters with increasing awareness and care, they're preparing the way for a new generation of artists and creators, a generation that will build on this foundation while hopefully learning from its challenges. A generation that may create something even more remarkable, even more sustainable, even more beautifully humane. But that, my gentle listener, is a story for another evening, as we look toward the future horizons of this remarkable cultural journey. As we drift gently into the next chapter of our journey, we find ourselves at a fascinating crossroads, where the familiar currents of K-pop and K-dramas begin to widen into a vast, shimmering ocean of possibility. This is what we might call the next wave, a gentle swell of emerging artists and evolving genres that represent the beautiful, organic growth of Korean creative expression beyond the boundaries we've come to know so well. Picture, if you will, a majestic river that has flowed powerfully through our consciousness for decades. Its waters have been strong and defined, carving deep channels of pop and drama into the cultural landscape. But now tributaries are beginning to branch off in every direction, each one finding its own unique path through the terrain of global taste. These are the new creators, the artists, writers, musicians, and storytellers who are gently reshaping what Korean entertainment can be and where it can flow. Let's first consider the music that's emerging from beyond the traditional K-pop framework. There's a rising generation of singer-songwriters who craft their music like delicate watercolor paintings, intimate, personal, and profoundly soothing. Artists like Baekhyun, whose voice feels like a warm blanket on a cool evening, or 10 centimeters, whose simple acoustic melodies capture the quiet poetry of everyday life. They're not creating stadium anthems or elaborate choreography routines. Instead, they're offering something more subtle, the musical equivalent of a heartfelt conversation between friends or a gentle rain that washes away the noise of the day. And then there are the genre blenders, musicians like Epic High who blend rap with spoken word poetry, or Balming Tiger who create this wonderful hybrid of hip-hop, electronic, and traditional Korean sounds. They're like culinary artists taking familiar ingredients and combining them in ways that surprise and delight our senses, creating flavors we never knew we needed. In the world of visual storytelling, the expansion is equally captivating. Think of Korean cinema, which has always had its own distinctive voice, but now speaks with increasing nuance and variety. Beyond the gripping thrillers and romantic dramas, we're seeing quiet, contemplative films that explore the human condition with exquisite sensitivity. Films like Poetry by Lee Chang-dong, which unfolds with the gentle pace of a leaf floating downstream, or Minari, which captures the delicate balance between two cultures, two homes, two ways of being. These are stories that don't shout for attention, but rather whisper their truths, inviting us to lean in closer and listen more carefully. They understand that sometimes the most powerful emotions are those expressed with restraint, like a single tear held back rather than a river of tears shed. What's particularly beautiful about this next wave is how it's flowing into spaces where Korean culture hasn't traditionally been present. Consider literature, where Korean authors are beginning to make quiet but significant ripples across the global literary pond. Writers like Han Kang, whose novel The Vegetarian won the Man Booker International Prize, create prose that feels like silk, smooth, luxurious, and capable of wrapping around complex philosophical questions with tender grace. Or Hwang Sok-yong, whose historical novels give voice to generations who lived through Korea's turbulent 20th century. They're not just telling Korean stories for Korean readers, they're exploring universal human experiences through a specifically Korean lens, like looking at the moon through differently shaped windows. The moon remains the same, but our perspective shifts. Then there's the world of performing arts, where contemporary Korean dance and theater are beginning to stretch their wings. Imagine a modern dance piece that blends traditional Korean movement, the flowing sleeves of hanbok, the deliberate gestures of ceremonial dances, with contemporary choreography. It's like watching seasons change, the familiar blossoms of tradition giving way to new growth, yet both equally beautiful, equally valid. These performances often explore themes of identity, memory, and belonging in ways that transcend language, speaking directly to something deep within our shared humanity. Visual arts, too, are experiencing their own gentle renaissance. Korean artists are working across mediums, from traditional ink painting to digital installations, creating works that bridge centuries in a single glance. Some draw inspiration from Korea's rich history of ceramics, with their elegant simplicity and respect for natural forms, while others experiment with light, sound, and interactive elements that invite participation rather than passive observation. It's as if the spirit of Korean aesthetics, that appreciation for balance, for the beauty in imperfection, for the space between things, is finding new expressions for a new era. Perhaps most heartening is how these emerging artists are finding their audiences not through massive marketing campaigns or viral moments, but through quiet discovery. A listener finds a new musician while creating a playlist for a rainy afternoon. A reader picks up a novel because the cover art speaks to them in some indefinable way. A viewer stumbles upon an independent film at a small festival and feels seen in a way they haven't before. These connections form like morning dew, one droplet at a time, gathering slowly until they create something that shimmers in the light. And here's something truly special. Many of these creators are consciously building bridges between Korea's past and its future. They might sample traditional Korean folk songs in electronic compositions or incorporate elements of Hanok architecture into modern design. They're not rejecting tradition, but rather having a conversation with it, asking what those ancient forms and sounds and stories might have to say to contemporary ears, contemporary hearts. It's like planting a centuries-old tree in new soil and watching what unexpected blossoms might appear. As these new voices grow stronger, they're also creating space for different kinds of stories to be told. We're hearing more from women creators, from LGBTQ artists, from those exploring disability or mental health with sensitivity and insight. We're seeing stories set in small towns rather than glittering cities. Stories about ordinary people facing ordinary challenges with extraordinary grace. These narratives expand our understanding of what Korean life can look like, remind us that every culture contains multitudes, and that sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply to tell a story that hasn't been told before. Think of this evolution as a garden that's been carefully tended for generations. For a long time, certain flowers were cultivated most assiduously, the bright blooms of pop music, the climbing vines of dramatic TV. But now, the gardeners are expanding their vision. They're planting new seeds in different corners of the garden, seeing what might thrive in partial shade, what might bloom in early spring or late autumn. Some plants will grow tall and strong, others will remain small but precious. Some will attract pollinators from far away, others will create beauty mostly for themselves. And all of it together creates a richer, more diverse, more resilient ecosystem. This next wave isn't about replacing what came before. The mighty river of K-pop and K-dramas continues to flow with power and beauty. Rather, these new tributaries add to the overall watershed, ensuring that the landscape remains fertile and vibrant. They remind us that creativity, like water, cannot be contained forever in familiar channels. It will always seek new paths, new expressions, new ways to reach thirsty ground. And as we prepare to explore how these cultural currents are being received and reinterpreted around the world, how different cultures are drinking from these streams and making them part of their own landscapes, we might carry with us this image of gentle expansion. Not a flood that washes everything away, but a steady, patient flow that nourishes new ground, supports new growth, and creates connections between places and people who might otherwise remain separate. A wave that doesn't crash, but rises slowly, carrying within it the promise of shores not yet touched, horizons not yet seen. Horizons we'll explore together in the quiet spaces just ahead. As we settle into tonight's gentle exploration, we arrive at a fascinating crossroads in our journey through the Korean wave. After witnessing how Hallyu has traveled across oceans and borders, we now turn our attention to how it has been received, reshaped, and reinterpreted by different cultures around the world. It's like watching rain fall on different landscapes. The same water reaches every shore, but it nourishes different ecosystems, creates different rivers, and gives life to different kinds of flowers. Korean pop culture has been this gentle rain showering across the globe, and tonight we'll witness how each culture has grown its own unique garden from these shared seeds. Let's begin our journey in Latin America, where K-pop and K-dramas have found a particularly warm embrace. Picture the vibrant streets of Mexico City or Sao Paulo, where local fans have developed such deep connections with Korean culture that they've created their own Spanish-language fandoms with distinct local flair. In Chile, university students formed K-pop dance cover groups that blend traditional Korean choreography with Latin dance styles, creating something that feels both familiar and entirely new. These aren't just passive viewers, they're active participants who have taken Korean cultural elements and woven them into their own social fabrics. Much like how a recipe travels from one country to another and gets adapted to local ingredients, Korean entertainment has been seasoned with Latin passion and spontaneity, creating fusion experiences that would be unrecognizable in Seoul but feel perfectly natural in Lima or Bogota. Now let's travel across the Pacific to Southeast Asia, where the Korean wave first made landfall and has since become deeply integrated into local cultures. In the Philippines, K-dramas aren't just watched, they're translated, dubbed with local celebrity voices and broadcast on primetime television, becoming part of the national conversation. Filipino fans have developed a unique way of engaging with Korean content that reflects their own cultural values of family, community, and collective joy. Meanwhile, in Thailand, the adaptation goes even deeper. Thai TV networks don't just air Korean dramas, they produce their own remakes, reimagining Korean stories with Thai actors, settings, and cultural references. It's as if they've taken the blueprint of a Korean drama and built a beautiful Thai-style home on that foundation, creating something that honors the original while being unmistakably local. Indonesian fans have created entire subcultures around Korean beauty standards, but they've adapted them to suit Indonesia's tropical climate and diverse skin tones, developing new techniques and products that work within their environment. Cross the Indian Ocean to the Middle East and you'll find another fascinating adaptation. In countries like Iran and the United Arab Emirates, Korean dramas have found unexpected resonance, particularly among young women who see in them alternative representations of modernity, romance, and female agency. The cultural distance between Seoul and Tehran might seem vast, but viewers have found common ground in universal themes of love, family conflict, and personal growth. What's particularly interesting here is how fans navigate cultural differences, sometimes skipping certain scenes or interpreting storylines through their own cultural lenses. It's like looking at the same painting but noticing different details depending on where you stand in the room. Let's drift now to Europe, where each country seems to have developed its own unique relationship with Hallyu. In France, Korean cinema initially served as the gateway, with French audiences appreciating Korean films through the lens of their own rich cinematic tradition. The French approach tends to be more intellectual and analytical. They don't just consume Korean content, they study it, write academic papers about it, and host film festivals dedicated to it. Meanwhile, in countries like Poland and Hungary, K-pop fandoms have formed tight-knit communities that provide not just entertainment, but social belonging in sometimes culturally isolated environments. It's as if Korean pop culture has become a common language that young Europeans from different backgrounds can use to connect with each other, transcending their own national boundaries. Now let's cross the Atlantic to North America, where the Korean wave has taken on yet another form. In the United States, the reception has been fascinatingly layered. While K-pop groups like BTS achieve mainstream success, their American fans often approach them through the framework of American entertainment values, celebrating the music's production quality, the choreography's precision, and the overall spectacle. But there's also a deeper adaptation happening in Asian American communities, where Korean pop culture serves as a bridge between immigrant parents and their American-born children, creating shared cultural references that span generations and geographies. In Canada, with its multicultural mosaic, Korean content gets filtered through an even more diverse set of cultural lenses, creating hybrid identities and fan expressions that reflect the country's commitment to cultural pluralism. Perhaps the most profound cultural reinterpretation is happening in Africa, a continent with growing connections to Korean culture. In Nigeria, for instance, local musicians and filmmakers are drawing inspiration from Korean production techniques and storytelling methods, not to copy them, but to enhance their own creative traditions. They're asking themselves, what can we learn from how Korean dramas build emotional tension? How can we apply Korean beauty industry's attention to detail to our own fashion and cosmetics? It's less about adopting Korean culture wholesale and more about engaging in a creative dialogue, taking what works and adapting it to local contexts. This is cultural exchange at its most beautiful, a conversation where both sides grow and change through the interaction. Now, consider how these global interpretations create feedback loops back to Korea itself. As Korean content creators see how their work is being adapted and reinterpreted overseas, they begin to incorporate more global elements into their creations. It's like a conversation that starts in one language, gets translated into many others, and those translations in turn influence how the original language evolves. Korean dramas might include more diverse international settings. K-pop songs might incorporate musical elements from cultures that have embraced them, and Korean beauty brands might develop products specifically for different skin types around the world. The flow isn't just outward anymore, it's becoming circular, with influences traveling in all directions. What's particularly gentle and beautiful about these global reinterpretations is how they reveal our shared humanity while honoring our differences. A teenager in Buenos Aires might interpret a BTS song's message of self-love through the lens of Argentine social struggles. A mother in Cairo might find comfort in a Korean family drama that reminds her of her own family dynamics, despite the cultural differences. A university student in Seoul might feel pride seeing how their culture has inspired creative adaptations worldwide. Each interpretation adds a new layer of meaning to the original work, like multiple translations of a poem that each captured different shades of its beauty. As we observe this global tapestry of interpretations and adaptations, we begin to see Hallyu less as a monolithic wave crashing over the world and more as countless gentle streams flowing through different cultural landscapes, each picking up different colors and textures along the way. Some streams flow quickly through urban youth cultures. Others seep slowly into traditional societies. Some create sudden waterfalls of cultural change, while others meander gradually, reshaping their banks over time. But all of them carry the same essential water: stories of human emotion, beauty standards that celebrate care and attention, music that speaks to universal feelings, and narratives that explore what it means to live, love, and struggle. This intricate web of global adaptations naturally leads us to wonder what makes all of this possible. What structures, systems, and economic engines support this remarkable cultural exchange and allow it to flourish across such diverse landscapes? How does a cultural phenomenon of this scale sustain itself, adapt, and continue to grow? The answer lies in understanding the sophisticated machinery that has been built to support and propel the Korean cultural industry forward, creating not just art and entertainment, but an entire ecosystem of creativity, commerce, and connection. The gentle rain of Korean culture that has nourished so many different gardens around the world didn't simply fall from the sky. It was carefully cultivated, channeled, and distributed through thoughtful systems and structures, which is where our journey will gently turn next. Imagine, if you will, a vast, intricate clockwork mechanism. A complex system of gears and springs, wheels and weights, all working in perfect harmony to mark the passage of time with incredible precision. Now, picture this same mechanical marvel, but instead of measuring hours and minutes, it creates something far more magical. It creates stars, it crafts art, it builds dreams. This is perhaps the best way to understand the unique machinery behind the Korean entertainment industry. A system so finely tuned, so deliberately constructed, that it has become one of the most remarkable creative engines in the world today. Let's begin where all dreams start, with training. In Korea, becoming an idol isn't simply about having talent and being discovered. It's a rigorous, years-long process that begins often in childhood. Think of it as a modern-day apprenticeship, but for performing arts. Young hopefuls, sometimes as young as 11 or 12, audition for entertainment companies. If selected, they become what are known as trainees. This training period is intense and comprehensive, covering singing, dancing, acting, language lessons, media training, and even personal development. The trainees live together in dormitories, attending school during the day and training late into the night. It's a total immersion into the world of performance, not unlike how a young athlete might train at a specialized academy for their sport. The system has been compared to a factory, but that's too cold a description. It's more like a conservatory, a hothouse for talent, where potential is carefully nurtured and shaped over years. What's fascinating about this system is its thoroughness. Trainees don't just learn how to sing or dance, they learn how to move, how to speak, how to present themselves to cameras, how to interact with fans, even how to manage their schedules and maintain their health. It's a holistic education in celebrity itself. The best way to understand it might be to imagine a master artisan taking on apprentices. The master doesn't just teach them how to use their tools, they teach them how to see the world through the eyes of their craft, how to live their art, how to become the embodiment of their work. That's what the trainee system aims to do. It doesn't just create performers, it creates artists who understand every dimension of their profession. Now, let's move to the next part of this intricate machine, the production system. Korean entertainment companies are often vertically integrated. This means they handle everything from discovering and training talent, to producing music and television shows, to managing distribution and marketing. It's a complete ecosystem under one roof. This integration allows for an incredible level of coordination and quality control. Think of it as a master chef who not only creates the recipes but also grows the vegetables, selects the spices, designs the kitchen, and trains the staff. Every element is considered, every detail attended to, all working toward a unified vision of excellence. One of the most distinctive aspects of Korean production is the concept of comebacks. In Western pop culture, artists typically release albums or singles when they feel creatively ready, often with years between major releases. In Korea, the system operates on a different rhythm. Idol groups might have multiple comebacks in a single year, each with a complete concept, music video, choreography, and promotional cycle. This regular rhythm creates a constant engagement with fans, like seasons in nature. Each comeback brings something new, while maintaining the essential character of the group. The planning for these comebacks is meticulous, often beginning months in advance, with teams of songwriters, choreographers, stylists, and directors all working together to create a cohesive artistic statement. The production values in Korean entertainment are famously high. Music videos are often cinematic mini-movies, with elaborate sets, intricate costumes, and complex storylines. Television dramas are produced with movie-level quality, often filmed entirely before airing to ensure consistency and avoid the rushed production schedules common in some other countries. This commitment to quality isn't just about budget, it's about a philosophy that every aspect of entertainment should be crafted with care and intention. It's like a master watchmaker who polishes even the smallest screw, knowing that every component contributes to the whole. Distribution is where this remarkable system connects with the world. Korean entertainment companies were early adopters of digital distribution and social media strategies that would later become standard globally. They recognized that in the internet age, content could travel instantly across borders, and they built their systems accordingly. Music videos are uploaded to YouTube with careful timing to maximize global visibility. Subtitles in multiple languages are added almost immediately. Social media accounts for artists are managed with strategic precision, creating a sense of intimacy and connection with fans worldwide. What's particularly interesting is how Korean companies think about international markets. Instead of seeing the world as separate territories, they view it as a single connected audience. A fan in Brazil, a viewer in France, a listener in Indonesia, they're all part of the same global community. This global-first approach was revolutionary when it began and has become a blueprint for international entertainment distribution. It's like building a bridge that doesn't just cross a river, but connects entire continents, designed from the beginning to carry traffic in all directions. The role of fan culture in this distribution system cannot be overstated. Korean entertainment companies have developed sophisticated ways to engage with and nurture fan communities. Fan meetings, video calls with artists, exclusive content for fan club members, and carefully managed interactions on social media all create a sense of participation and belonging. Fans aren't just consumers, they're part of the ecosystem. Their enthusiasm and support fueling the system's continued success. It's a beautiful symbiosis, like a garden where the flowers and the bees depend on each other, each making the other's existence possible and more beautiful. Behind all of this is an economic model that supports these high levels of investment. Korean entertainment companies generate revenue not just from music sales or television ratings, but from a diverse range of sources: concert tours, merchandise, brand endorsements, digital content, and more. This diversified approach allows for sustained investment in quality. It's like a well-tended orchard that produces not just one type of fruit, but many, ensuring that even if one crop has a difficult season, the whole system remains healthy and productive. Now you might wonder, with all this system, all this machinery, is there still room for genuine artistry? The answer lies in understanding that systems and creativity aren't opposites. A great orchestra has a complex system of musicians, conductors, composers, and instruments, but that system exists to create beautiful music. The Korean entertainment system provides the structure, the support, the platform within which individual artists can develop their unique voices and talents. It's the trellis that supports the growing vine, giving it shape and direction. But the vine itself, its leaves, its flowers, its fruit, that is the unique expression of the plant's own nature. This industry machine has evolved over decades, learning from both successes and challenges. It's a living system, constantly adapting to new technologies, changing audience preferences, and global trends. What began as a domestic entertainment industry has grown into a global cultural force, not by accident, but through deliberate, thoughtful construction of systems that support excellence and connection. As we've seen this machinery, from the training of young talents to the production of dazzling content to its distribution across the globe, represents a remarkable achievement in cultural creation. But systems and structures, no matter how impressive, are ultimately just frameworks. The true magic happens when individual human beings move through these systems, when their unique stories, talents, and dreams find expression within this supportive structure. The industry machine provides the canvas and the paints, but it's the artists who create the masterpiece. And that brings us to the most beautiful part of this journey, the personal stories, the individual transformations, the moments of connection that happen when art meets audience, when performer meets fan, when one culture's stories find resonance in another's heart. These are the human threads woven through the intricate tapestry of the Korean wave, threads we'll gently explore together next. And now, let us gently turn our attention to the most personal and intimate dimensions of the Korean wave. We have spoken of charts and trends, of industries and economies, but beyond all of these, there exists a quiet human current, countless individual stories where Korean pop culture has not just been consumed, but has touched, connected, and even transformed lives across the globe. These are not stories of fame or fortune, necessarily, but of quiet discovery, of finding a piece of yourself in a melody from a place you've never been, of a sense of belonging sparked by a lyric you don't fully understand, yet feel in your heart. Tonight, I'd like to share a few of these gentle narratives with you, stories that remind us that culture at its core is about connection. Imagine a young woman in a small town in the American Midwest. Let's call her Maya. The winters there are long and quiet, the landscape vast and flat. For years, Maya felt a subtle but persistent sense of being out of place, a quiet dissonance with her surroundings she couldn't quite name. One evening, scrolling through videos, she stumbled upon a music video by the Korean group BTS. It wasn't just the music, though the soaring vocals and intricate rap drew her in. It was the visual language, the storytelling, the symbolism woven into every frame, the raw emotion on the members' faces as they sang about loneliness, self-love, and the struggle to find one's path. It spoke to her in a way no other media ever had. She began to learn about the lyrics, their deeper meanings inspired by literature and philosophy. This wasn't just entertainment, it was an invitation to think, to feel deeply, to explore her own identity. Through this portal, Maya discovered not just a music group, but a global community of fans who shared her newfound passion. She began learning Korean, not with the pressure of fluency, but with the joy of understanding the poetry behind the songs. That small town didn't feel quite so isolating anymore. She had found a window to a wider world, and in doing so, had started to better understand the landscape of her own inner world. For Maya, the Korean wave was a gentle tide that washed away a sense of isolation and brought with it a sense of global kinship and self-discovery. Now, picture a man in his 40s living in Sao Paulo, Brazil. His name is Carlos. Life for Carlos was a rhythm of work, family responsibilities, and the quiet nostalgia for creative pursuits he'd set aside in his youth. He considered his taste in music and film firmly established, a closed book. Then, one weekend, his teenage daughter insisted he watch a Korean drama with her. It was Crash Landing on You. With a sigh he agreed, expecting something frivolous. What he found instead was a story of breathtaking sweep, a tale of cross-border love, sacrifice and humor that felt both grand and intimately human. He was captivated by the pacing, the way the story took its time to build characters, the way it made him care deeply about people from a culture and political context entirely foreign to him. He and his daughter began watching more dramas together. It became their weekly ritual, a bridge across the generation gap. Carlos found himself moved by stories that dealt with family, honor, and resilience in ways that felt fresh yet universal. He started listening to the soundtracks, the beautiful instrumentals and poignant ballads. That closed book of his tastes was opened to a new, vibrant chapter. The Korean wave, for Carlos, wasn't about being trendy. It was a rediscovery of narrative wonder and, most beautifully, a new thread of connection woven into the fabric of his relationship with his daughter. Let's travel to a cozy apartment in Paris, France. Here lives Sophie, a graphic designer in her late 20s. Sophie had always been fascinated by aesthetics, by the interplay of color, form, and emotion. She followed fashion and design blogs from around the world. The Korean beauty trends that began appearing everywhere initially struck her as intriguing but somewhat opaque. A 10-step skincare routine seemed like a foreign language. Curiosity got the better of her, and she purchased a few recommended products: a gentle cleanser, a hydrating serum, a soothing sheet mask. The experience was transformative, but not in the way one might expect. It wasn't about achieving a perfect complexion overnight. It was about the ritual. The slow, deliberate process of caring for her skin became a form of mindfulness, a dedicated few minutes of quiet self-care at the end of each hectic day. The philosophy behind it, prevention, hydration, nurturing rather than attacking, resonated with her. She began to see skincare not as a chore or a vanity, but as a gentle daily act of kindness toward herself. This simple shift in perspective, inspired by a cultural export, rippled out into other areas of her life, encouraging her to approach her work and her relationships with more patience and intentional care. For Sophie, the Korean wave delivered a quiet philosophy of wellness wrapped in beautiful packaging. And consider a story from closer to the creative source, but with a twist. Imagine a young filmmaker in Seoul, June, growing up. June consumed Hollywood blockbusters and European art films, seeing them as the pinnacle of cinematic achievement. He felt a subtle pressure to make films that would appeal to that international standard, sometimes at the expense of local stories he wanted to tell. Then he witnessed the global phenomenon of Parasite and later the Netflix success of series like Squid Game. He saw stories that were unapologetically, specifically Korean, dealing with class tension, societal pressure, local history, resonate with audiences in America, Europe, Africa, everywhere. It was a revelation. The global market wasn't asking him to erase his Korean identity. It was hungry for it. It wanted the specificity, the unique humor, the distinct emotional grammar of his culture. This external validation, this global embrace, empowered him. It gave him permission to dive deeper into the stories of his own community, his own family history, with the confidence that their universal human truths would shine through. For June, the Korean wave was an outgoing tide that returned as an affirming wave, reinforcing the value of his own voice and perspective. These stories of Maya finding connection, Carlos rebuilding bonds, Sophie discovering mindfulness, and June finding creative confidence are just whispers in a vast global conversation. They remind us that cultural exchange is never a one-way street. It is a slow, gentle dance of giving and receiving, of influence and adaptation. As Korean music, drama, beauty, and food have flowed out into the world, something beautiful has been flowing back. Global fans are learning Korean in record numbers, visiting the country not just as tourists, but as pilgrims to filming locations. They are incorporating Korean words into their slang, trying their hand at making kimchi or tteokbokki in their home kitchens. In return, Korean creators are listening. They see the diverse global audience they now have. You can hear it in the increasing lyrical references to global issues, in the collaborations with Western artists, in the storylines that subtly acknowledge an international viewership. It's a soft, mutual reshaping. Think of it like two gardens separated by a low fence. For a long time, each garden grew its own native flowers, beautiful and contained. Then, a few seeds from the Korean garden, a drama, a pop song, a skincare essence, were carried by the wind over the fence. They took root in foreign soil. People in the other garden admired these new blooms, their unique shapes and scents. They began to tend to them, learn their names, and even cross-pollinate them with their own flowers, creating beautiful new hybrids. Meanwhile, the gardeners in the first garden, seeing how beloved their flowers were abroad, were inspired to cultivate even more varieties, to experiment. And they too began to notice and appreciate the different flowers growing just over the fence. The fence didn't disappear, but it became less of a barrier and more of a meeting point. Both gardens are now richer, more diverse, and more interconnected because of this gentle, ongoing exchange of seeds. This is the quiet human heartbeat of the Hallyu phenomenon. Beyond the charts and the box office records, it is about millions of personal journeys like Maya's, Carlos's, Sophie's, and June's. It's about the loneliness soothed by a song from halfway around the world, the family bond strengthened over a shared story, the simple ritual that becomes an act of self-love, and the creative spirit emboldened by global recognition. These individual transformations, these tiny sparks of connection, are what weave the grand, glittering tapestry of the Korean wave. And as we appreciate this intricate tapestry of personal and cultural exchange, we can begin to sense how these threads are being woven into an even larger pattern, one that is subtly reshaping the landscape of global culture itself. As we've been gently exploring this Korean wave, it's important to remember that cultural influence is never just a one-way street. The flow of ideas, of beauty standards, of storytelling traditions moves in both directions, like a gentle tide that ebbs and flows between shores. And so, in this segment, we turn our attention to what Korea itself receives from this global engagement, to the ways that the world's cultures have been quietly shaping and enriching Korean society, even as Korean culture spreads outward. It's a delicate dance of exchange, a conversation that flows back and forth across oceans and time zones. Consider for a moment the very concept of global influence. For centuries, Korean culture absorbed elements from its immediate neighbors, Chinese philosophy, Japanese aesthetics during certain historical periods, Buddhist traditions that traveled along the Silk Road. But in our contemporary world, the influences have become more diffuse, more diverse, arriving from every corner of the globe. You can hear it in the music, the way K-pop producers incorporate Afrobeat rhythms or Latin American percussion patterns, or the synth textures of Scandinavian pop. You can see it in fashion, where traditional hanbok lines might be reinterpreted with European tailoring techniques, or streetwear aesthetics from New York or Tokyo blend seamlessly with Korean sensibilities. One of the most beautiful aspects of this exchange is how it happens through people, through the artists who study abroad, the producers who collaborate across continents, the directors who watch international films and absorb different storytelling traditions. Think of it like a great potluck dinner where everyone brings a dish from their own culinary tradition, and through sharing and tasting, new combinations emerge that no one could have imagined alone. The Korean filmmakers who studied French New Wave cinema brought back techniques that would eventually transform Korean cinema. The choreographers who trained in Los Angeles or New York brought movement vocabularies that would reshape K-pop performance. The beauty influencers who traveled to Paris or Milan returned with color palettes and application techniques that would be reimagined through a Korean lens. Let's consider food, that universal language of cultural exchange. Korean cuisine has always been dynamic, but in recent decades, it has embraced ingredients and techniques from around the world in fascinating ways. The Korean interpretation of Italian pasta, for instance, spicy seafood pasta with gochujang, or creamy carbonara with kimchi, These aren't simply copies of Italian dishes, but rather new creations born from the meeting of two culinary traditions. The Korean bakeries that incorporate French pastry techniques while using local ingredients like sweet red bean or black sesame. The coffee culture that arrived from the West but developed its own distinctly Korean character in those beautiful multi-story cafes that have become social hubs. Each of these fusions represents more than just culinary experimentation. They represent cultural dialogue, a willingness to take something from elsewhere and make it one's own. Language itself tells this story of exchange. Modern Korean incorporates loanwords from English, Japanese, Chinese, and other languages, adapting them to Korean pronunciation and grammar. But more interestingly, Korean youth culture has developed entire new ways of speaking that blend linguistic elements in creative ways. There's Konglish, of course, English words used in Korean contexts, but there's also the phenomenon of language play where words are shortened, combined, transformed in ways that reflect both global connectivity and local creativity. This linguistic flexibility mirrors the broader cultural openness, a willingness to absorb, adapt, and remix. In the world of beauty and skincare, which we've touched on before, the exchange has been particularly rich. Korea's beauty industry learned from European luxury brands, from Japanese minimalist formulations, from American marketing techniques. But what makes this exchange special is how Korea didn't just adopt these elements, it synthesized them, creating something entirely new. The 10-step skincare routine isn't purely traditional Korean practice, nor is it purely Western scientific approach. It's a hybrid, a blend of traditional herbal wisdom with modern dermatological science, of Eastern self-care philosophies with Western efficiency. Korean beauty companies now have research centers around the world, learning about different skin types, different environmental challenges, different cultural beauty standards, and bringing that knowledge back to create products that work for a global market. Education has been another fascinating channel of exchange. The generations of Korean students who studied abroad in the United States, Europe, Australia, returned with not just academic knowledge, but with different ways of thinking, different perspectives on creativity and innovation. Many of the architects of Korea's cultural industries, from entertainment executives to fashion designers to tech entrepreneurs, spent formative years overseas. They brought back what they learned, but they also brought back questions. Why do we do things this way? What if we tried something different? This cross-pollination of educational experiences has been crucial to Korea's creative renaissance. Even in something as seemingly traditional as family structures and social norms, global influences have been gently at work. While Korea maintains strong cultural values around family and community, ideas about gender roles, work-life balance, individualism versus collectivism, these have been part of an ongoing conversation with global trends. The rise of single-person households, changing attitudes toward marriage and career, discussions about mental health, all of these reflect Korea's engagement with global discourse while being filtered through Korean cultural sensibilities. It's like a river that receives tributaries from many sources. The water changes, becomes richer, more complex, but it remains the same river flowing through its own landscape. The entertainment industry provides some of the clearest examples of this two-way exchange. Korean drama writers watch American TV and learn about pacing and plot structure. Korean variety show producers study Japanese and European formats. Korean film directors analyze the cinematography of Iranian cinema or the storytelling techniques of Latin American magical realism. But here's the beautiful part: they don't simply copy. They take these elements and reinterpret them through Korean narrative traditions, through Korean emotional sensibilities, through the particular rhythm of Korean life. The result is something that feels both familiar to international audiences and distinctly Korean. Perhaps the most profound exchange happens at the level of identity itself. As Korean culture goes global, as more people around the world engage with Korean films, music, food, and beauty products, Koreans themselves are seeing their culture reflected back to them through foreign eyes. This mirroring effect, seeing how others perceive and value aspects of Korean culture, can change how Koreans view their own traditions. Things that might have been taken for granted or even viewed as old-fashioned suddenly gain new appreciation when seen as valuable through an international lens. Traditional hanbok, for instance, has experienced a renaissance not just because of historical dramas, but because international fashion designers and celebrities have embraced it, showing Koreans new possibilities in their own heritage. This brings us to a delicate point about cultural exchange, the dance between preservation and evolution. As Korea absorbs global influences, there's a natural concern about losing what makes Korean culture distinct. But what we often see instead is a process of creative adaptation. Traditional elements aren't discarded, they're reinterpreted, given new contexts, new meanings. The gaejeum, a traditional Korean string instrument, might be played alongside electric guitars in a K-pop track. Traditional porcelain techniques might be used to create contemporary art installations. Ancient folk tales might be reimagined as animated films with global themes. This isn't dilution, it's enrichment. It's like a family recipe that gets passed down through generations. Each cook might add their own twist, use slightly different ingredients based on what's available, but the essence of the dish remains even as it evolves. The digital age has accelerated this exchange in fascinating ways. Social media platforms allow for instant sharing of trends, ideas, aesthetics across borders. Korean teenagers watch TikTok videos from Brazil and incorporate dance moves into their own routines. American makeup artists study Korean beauty tutorials on YouTube. French chefs learn about fermenting techniques from Korean cooking channels. This creates a kind of global cultural ecosystem where influences circulate constantly, mixing and recombining in unexpected ways. Korea, with its advanced digital infrastructure and highly connected population, is both a contributor to and beneficiary of this ecosystem. What's remarkable is how this exchange has fostered a new kind of cultural confidence in Korea. The ability to absorb global influences while maintaining a strong sense of identity has created what we might call cultural bilingualism, the capacity to move between cultural frameworks, to understand multiple aesthetic languages, to create work that speaks to both local and global audiences. This isn't about becoming less Korean. It's about becoming more complexly Korean, with layers of understanding that come from engaging deeply with the wider world. As we gently reflect on this two-way exchange, we might think of it as a kind of cultural respiration, inhaling influences from around the world, metabolizing them through Korean creativity, and exchanging new cultural expressions back into the global atmosphere. This breathing, this constant flow keeps cultures alive, vibrant, evolving. Korea's remarkable moment in the global cultural spotlight isn't just about what Korea gives to the world, but also about what Korea receives, the ideas, the inspirations, the challenges that come from being part of a global conversation. And this conversation, this gentle back and forth of cultural currents, brings us naturally to wonder about what comes next. As these exchanges continue, as the boundaries between cultures become ever more permeable in our connected world, what new forms of creativity might emerge? What new syntheses of tradition and innovation might we witness in the years to come? The story of cultural exchange is never finished. It's an ongoing narrative, one that continues to unfold with each new generation of artists, thinkers, and creators who reach across borders to share, to learn, to create together. And so, as we prepare to consider what the future might hold for this continuing evolution, we can rest in the knowledge that cultural exchange, like the ocean's tides, will continue its gentle, ceaseless rhythm, connecting shores, carrying treasures between lands, reminding us that we are all part of the same vast, beautiful human conversation. As we reach the final gentle turns of our journey through the Korean wave, you might find yourself wondering, as I do, where this current will carry us next. We've watched this beautiful cultural river flow from its origins in Korea's recovery and resilience, through the valleys of entertainment and beauty, and out into the vast ocean of global consciousness. It has watered landscapes and touched shores we never imagined it could reach. And now, as we sit here together in this quiet moment of contemplation, let's gently turn our gaze downstream to where the waters seem to be flowing, to what shapes they might carve in the years to come. Think of it like watching a river at dusk, when the light catches the surface in certain ways that hint at the depths below, and the direction of the flow becomes a gentle, whispered promise of what's ahead. One of the most fascinating currents emerging is what we might call the wave of quiet innovation. We've seen the explosive spectacle of K-pop concerts and the dramatic arcs of K-dramas, but now we're beginning to witness something more subtle, more woven into the fabric of everyday life. Korean cultural influence is moving into what I like to think of as the interstitial spaces, the moments between the big events. It's appearing in the minimalist, functional design of everyday objects that find their way into our homes. It's in the thoughtful approach to wellness, the quiet rituals of skincare that have become moments of mindfulness rather than just beauty routines. This isn't about making a loud statement anymore. It's about creating a quality of life, a certain texture of experience that feels calm and considered. The future of the Korean wave might very well be less about what we watch on a screen and more about how we live in our spaces, how we move through our days with a little more intention, a little more grace. We're also seeing the waves begin to circle back in the most beautiful way. The global influence is now influencing Korea itself. It's like watching a river feed into the ocean, and then the tides bring new elements back to the river's mouth. International fans, having fallen in love with Korean stories and music, are now creating their own art in response. They're writing fan fiction set in the worlds of their favorite dramas, composing music inspired by K-pop's intricate production, and sharing beauty techniques they've adapted from Korean routines. This creative feedback loop is flowing back to Korea, where artists and creators are listening, learning, and incorporating these global perspectives. The next phase might be less about Korea exporting a finished product and more about a global conversation, a shared creation. Imagine a story that begins in Seoul, is interpreted by a writer in Sao Paulo, visualized by an artist in Lagos, and then finds its way back to be reimagined in Busan. The wave becomes less a one-way current and more a beautiful circulating system of inspiration. Technology, of course, will be the gentle wind that shapes these currents. We're already seeing hints of it. Virtual concerts where you can feel like you're standing in the front row from your living room, AI that can translate lyrics in real time while preserving the emotion and wordplay, augmented reality that lets you try on the exact makeup look from your favorite K-drama scene. But the future might hold something even more intimate. What if you could experience a drama not just by watching it, but by feeling the emotional landscape of the characters through some gentle wearable technology? What if learning a Korean skincare routine came with a biofeedback element that helped you truly relax into the ritual? Technology won't replace the human heart at the center of these cultural exchanges, but it might help that heart beat in sync with more people across greater distances in more meaningful ways. It will dissolve barriers, not of culture but of access and immersion. There's also a growing current towards sustainability and conscious creation. The early days of any cultural explosion can be intense, fast-paced, and sometimes exhausting. But as the Korean wave matures, there are thoughtful conversations happening about longevity, about ethical production, about the well-being of the artists who create the magic and the fans who support it. We might see a shift towards slower release cycles, giving stories and albums time to breathe and resonate. we might see beauty brands focusing not just on effective ingredients but on sustainable sourcing and refillable packaging. The wave is learning to be not just powerful, but also nurturing, to leave the cultural landscape richer and healthier than it found it. This is the wisdom that comes with experience, the understanding that true influence isn't measured in decibels or sales figures alone, but in the positive imprint left on people and the planet. And what of the stories themselves? The narratives that have captured so many hearts, I imagine them deepening, broadening. We've had romantic comedies that made us believe in fate, thrillers that kept us on the edge of our seats, historical epics that transported us. The future might bring us more stories from perspectives we haven't heard enough. Stories centered on quieter lives, on the elderly, on differently abled characters, on the complex realities of modern Korean society that exist beyond the glamorous facades often shown. The wave might bring us not just escape, but reflection, not just fantasy, but empathy. The universal emotions will remain: love, loss, hope, redemption. But they might be explored through lenses that feel even more authentic, more vulnerably human. A gentle question arises here, one worth sitting with: can this wave sustain itself? All cultural phenomena have their rhythms, their seasons. Some burn bright and fast, others settle into the bedrock and become part of the permanent landscape. I believe the Korean wave shows signs of becoming the latter. Its strength was never in being a fleeting trend, but in its remarkable adaptability, its willingness to listen, and its foundation in quality and emotional truth. It learned to speak a universal language while never forgetting its native tongue. It offered not just entertainment, but a philosophy of hard work, of continuous improvement, of caring for oneself and one's craft. These are timeless values. The specific expressions may change, the musical genres may evolve, the visual styles may shift, but the core current, this desire to create beauty and connection that seems enduring. Perhaps the most beautiful future current is the one that flows inward into you. The true destination of this journey isn't a place on a map or a trend forecast. It's in the quiet moments when a song from a group you've never seen live makes your day a little brighter. It's in the comfort of revisiting a familiar drama like one would revisit a favorite book. It's in the small ritual of a skincare routine that has become your personal time for peace. The Korean wave, at its best, has always been about gifting people moments of joy, of comfort, of feeling understood. That's not a wave that crashes and recedes, that's a wellspring. As long as it continues to offer that, a sense of belonging, a spark of beauty, a moment of respite in a busy world, it will find its way to new shores and new hearts. So as we look to where the water flows, it's not with anxiety about what comes next, but with a quiet curiosity. The journey of this cultural river is far from over. It will meander into new territories, merge with other streams of creativity, and carve new channels we can't yet imagine. But its essence, that blend of artistry, emotion, and humanity, will likely remain its guiding star. It will continue to surprise us, to comfort us, to remind us that stories and songs and shared moments of beauty are some of the most powerful currents that connect our human world. And with that gentle thought, we find ourselves at the edge of the water, ready to reflect on the entire journey we've taken together. As we gently come to the end of our journey through the Korean wave, let's pause for a moment to appreciate the beautiful tapestry that has unfolded across our global landscape. Like a delicate silken thread woven through the fabric of international culture, this movement has connected us all in surprising and meaningful ways. It's taught us that stories and beauty can transcend borders, that emotions translate across languages, and that what starts in one corner of the world can touch hearts everywhere. Tonight, as you rest, carry with you the gentle understanding that our world grows richer through these cultural exchanges, each song, each story, each moment of shared beauty adding another stitch to the intricate design of our shared humanity. Let this peaceful understanding drift with you into sleep, knowing that connection and wonder are always closer than they seem. Rest now with this quiet reflection settling softly around you.